4 or 5 years old, I had woken up one morning when I had woken up crying. I was very upset, knowing that my grandfather had just passed away in the night, and I felt like I had to tell my mother. I was the one responsible to tell my mother, and I felt like he had come to me during the night just to tell me that he was doing okay, but to tell my mom, and she didn't believe me. She said, no. She goes, Grandpa's fine. He's okay. I just talked to him, and they lived in another country. They lived in France. And I kept saying, no, Mommy, no, he's gone. He died. And she said, honey, you had a nightmare. You're okay. It's fine. But 1 hour later, she got a telegram. She got a telegram that her father had died in the night. Some of them want to be. We all have our 5 senses, but beyond that, we have what we call our clairs. A clair is heightened awareness, a heightened sense of sense. Mm-hmm. So clairvoyance, I'm clairvoyant, which means clear seeing, clairaudient, clear hearing, clairsentient, which is clear feeling, and there's a couple more: clear smelling and clear tasting. I think it's clairgustin and something like that. I'm not quite sure. I can check into it for you. Mm-hmm. And it's just a heightened sense of all of those things. So when something comes through for me, it will be what I see, hear, or feel, and sometimes simultaneously. So while I'm hearing something, I will see it, I will get a vision, and I will feel it in my heart. Mm-hmm. There are moments when I'll smell something. So oftentimes, as a woman, you like to wear perfume or cologne or something like that. During my readings, I don't, mm-hmm. because I don't want anything to interfere with what may come through in that way. So if I smell cigarette smoke all of a sudden, or cigar, or a perfume, mm-hmm. or fire, or things like that, that's just another way that spirit will convey a message. Dreams are made of this. We all have what I call our spiritual support team. We all have behind us our angels, our guardian angels, our spirit guides, ascended masters, our loved ones. So we all walk around with this rah-rah, spoon, kind of team. So if I receive information from behind me and I sense it behind me, those are my guides talking to me. And I will hear, I'll hear something, sometimes I'll go like that, and I'll hear a word or a phrase. I get a vision, I'll see or I'll feel. Now if I'm talking to you and I sense a presence near you, a father figure or a grandfather figure, somebody on mom's side, somebody on dad's side, it's how I feel. When spirit comes through, they will show me if they're male or female, if they're mom's side or dad's side of the family. If it's an energy above you, that I sense above, it is a parent, grandparent, aunt, or uncle that is, they're generations above you. If it's a generation next to you, then I will sense the presence next to you. So it's somebody in your generation, your age group. If I sense a presence below you, it's that of a child. So oftentimes they will come through with a name, initial. They'll show me a date on a calendar. I'll see a calendar flipping, just like in the movie, like you just kind of flip it. If it stops at a certain month, and I would say to you, does the month of October mean to you? Could it be, birthday, anniversary, something like that. They will talk about how they crossed over by making me feel a certain way. If I feel a sudden impact to my chest, it's car accident, gunshot wound, something like that. But they'll be a little bit more clear. If they show me that they were ill beforehand, they'll show me like a timeline. They'll say, well, I was sick for 4 months before. My hand will go on my body wherever the issue was. If it's cardiac, my hand will rest on my chest. They will make the way I channel. If it's cardiac or lung, my hand will go down my chest. If it's if there was, like I said, an impact, again, I feel impact to my body, car accident. They will show me if they were alone. It typically means that they crossed themselves over, they committed suicide. They have different ways of conveying that. Excuse me. So they'll talk about that, and further, they'll validate their presence by talking about something that you've done, like maybe this morning, Or yesterday, that they'll talk about a dental appointment you had. Did you go to the dentist? Something like that. And that's how they validate that they're still watching over you.
Who am I to disagree? Travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want you.
My kids, I think, from an early age, really learned that. They really, there was very little they could hide from me. If I needed to know something, that there were moments, like with my son, I walked into his bedroom once he was a teenager, and I looked at one of his drawers, and I pointed to the drawer, and I said, open that drawer. And he said, no. And I said, open it. I said, open it. And he said, I don't want to. And so I opened it. He had a BB gun in the drawer, which he knew he was not allowed to have BB guns, so confiscated that. My first husband was really uncomfortable with it, and I remember one day we were coming home, and we always came in through the garage door. We lived in an upper level condo, and we always came in through the garage door. But as we came in through the garage door, we would always walk right by the front door, so the two doors were adjacent to each other. And as we were coming up the stairs, he was behind me one day. We were coming home, and he was behind me, and I turned around, and I said, honey, open the front door, there's a package. And he said, what? And I said, open the front door, there's a package behind the door, will you get it? And he kind of looked at me funny. He opened the front door, there was a package. And then he looked at me and goes, how did you know that? And I said, I don't know, but there's, So he just thought that was a little, things like that. Things like that were a little bit odd for him. One day we were in the grocery store, and we were walking by the greeting cards, and I said to him, will you pick up a condolence card? A friend of ours, I said, Thelma's dad died. I said, will you get a condolence? And he looked at me, he goes, Thelma's dad died? He goes, oh my God. He goes, when? And I looked at him, I said, I don't know. And he goes, well, who told you? And I said, I don't know. He goes, are you sure that Thelma's dad died? And I said, I think so. He goes, but when and who told you? And I said, I don't know. And I said, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. So we put it back. The next morning, we got a phone call that our friend's father had died. But in the moment that I got the card, he was still alive. So he died 10 hours later. So it was a little strange. Sometimes I'll pick up on something, but I don't know where it's coming from, because it's just so, sometimes it just becomes a part of your everyday life, and you can't tell the difference. So, things like that will happen. Yeah, recently I did. The police, two retired captains of the West Bloomfield Police Department came to see me a few months ago regarding a cold case. A case that had gone cold, a murder case that was over 50 years old. And the agreement was I did not want to know any details about the case until I presented details, and then I wanted confirmation. So, pardon me. So they came in with a file about that thick on their lap. Oh, wow. And with everything that I presented, including the victim's name, where she was found, how she was murdered, a last remaining witness, and her birth date. Her birth date, actually, her parents' names came through, and her birth date. And every time a piece of, another piece of information came through, they would take it out of their file and show me that it was accurate. So, unfortunately, what came through for me was that the young man that had killed her had also passed. He also came through, actually, and I said, came through is that he had died of lung cancer 3 years ago. And in fact, that was accurate. He had died of lung cancer 3 years ago, but there was one remaining witness. And I was given the first name, the last initial. He's still living. And unfortunately, the last piece of all of this was that they wanted me to speak to the last remaining witness, and he refused. Mm-hmm. And I guess there was something about statute of limitations that he didn't have to talk to the police anymore. It's over 50 years old. I think I was 2 when it happened, you know, so that was it. They had to drop it. They had to drop it. So things like that. I did find, I located a lost child several years ago. I helped a woman find an adopted brother in Greece. Like that, you know, things like that. I was able to get families together. I helped her with that. We all have what we call, when we talk about that, our gut feeling. We have energy centers in our body, in our energy body, called chakras. And there are 7 that we know of mainly. And one of them is the solar plexus, which is right here in our gut. So when somebody says, I had a gut feeling, they're talking about this, their solar plexus. Or I knew it in my heart, they're talking about their heart chakra. Or I knew it off the top of my head, they're talking about the crown chakra, where they receive information from spirit through the crown. So we all have that. We all have that ability. And it was just a question of tapping into it, raising our vibration. We all vibrate at different frequencies, like a radio frequency that we just try to fine tune. So we all vibrate at different frequencies, and it's just a question of elevating that frequency enough to receive more information. I honor that. I honor people, all walks of life, all religions, all belief systems. It's just where they are in their journey, you know, where they are on their path, and it's their belief, and I respect that. So I will engage in conversation, or if I receive validation for them, and there have been many times where somebody skeptical will walk away from my table and say, oh, okay, thank you, you know, you've opened my eyes to something new and something different, which I will consider. So.
Does it bother you that there are people out there who call it, you know, pseudo-psychics, you call you a charlatan, a swindler, or a faux seer?
You know what? Let them speak to the clients that have come to me.
Lynn Darmon's daughter Allie is a healthy, happy 20-year-old, but her bright future almost never was. Something Lynn sensed while Allie was still in her womb.
And when did you start having a feeling something might be wrong with the baby?
Probably end of my 2nd trimester.
But when Allie was born and she looked to be this beautiful, healthy baby, at that point, did you feel at all relieved?
I remember holding her and having that feeling that something was really wrong with her. Just a feeling that something was not right.
Did you say anything at that point to your doctor?
Oh yeah, I did.
Lynn did more than just tell her doctor. Sensing the clock was ticking on her daughter's life, she risked being ridiculed as an hysteric and rushed Allie to the emergency room 3 times.
They checked her out and they said, she's fine, here are your discharge papers. And I refused to sign them.
At that point, they're starting to think we have a mom with postpartum depression.
Yes.
Before the psychiatrist could arrive, infectious disease specialist Dr. Bishara Frisch stepped in.
She was clearly concerned that there was something serious going on that nobody had been able to yet identify.
Lynn told Dr. Frisch she had more than just an ambiguous concern. She pinpointed a problem in Allie's abdomen.
How did you know that?
It just came to me like that.
Lynn had nailed it. Allie had a rare, undetected infection outside her small intestine. It was caught just in time.
She ended up being in the operating room within, you know, really 2-3 hours of the encounter.
They told you that, in fact, if she hadn't had that surgery, she could have died.
Yes, she could have.
I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that.
I was driving the car and everything turned blue, like the sky fell down. And I was blind. And I called my wife and she came and got me and we went right to a eye specialist. And he says that there's nothing wrong with my eyes other than it have high sugar. So I went to the doctor, and they gave me an insulin shot. And within a half hour, I crashed. And the next thing I know, I was on the gurney. And they says that, here he comes, here he comes. Well, while I was gone for over 3 minutes, my grandmother came to me and told me that I have to go back. And I didn't want to go back because the experience was so great. It was wonderful because there was no pressure, no nothing other than peace. But because of my granddaughter, Jessie, I did go back. And I thought it was a complete dream. Until a week later, after I got out of the hospital, I went back to the doctor. And the nurse that attended me, her wrist was all black and blue. And I asked her, what happened to you? And she says, you did that to me. I says, well, how could I do that to you? She says, you were holding on so tight, and you really didn't want to go, and you were holding on not to leave. And I says, well, I thought that was all a dream. And she says, no, you crashed. You were 0 over 0. And it was the most pleasant experience I've ever had in my life. What I saw was like not a bright light, but my grandmother had gray hair, and it was like she was just glowing. And then she didn't walk to me, she like drifted right to me. That's what I saw. None of them changed my life, but what I did realize is that I am not afraid to die. As long as I can die peacefully, I have no fear of death, because it's the most beautiful place in the world, or the universe, or wherever it is. Well, my grandfather had passed away. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I was downstairs really sleeping on the couch, and at that particular room there was Bermuda shutters, and the window was closed. And all of a sudden, all the shutters just shuddered. I mean, they were just shaking. And he just kind of stood there and looked at me. And then the next thing I know, my brother called me at 3 in the morning and says, Gramp was just here. And I said, yeah, I know, he just left me. So he just came and told us that, he was leaving. Then I called my mother and I told her, I said, did Gramps die? And she goes, yeah, about 15 minutes ago. Since then, he has visited me, just comes and sits at the end of my bed, doesn't say anything, he just looks at me, because we were extremely close. I mean, even when I moved to Florida, he left Michigan and his whole family moved to Florida with me. And he visited me about 3 times, the last time about maybe 15, 16 years ago. But since, I haven't seen him anymore.
expected the world, but it flew away from her reach. So she ran away in her sleep and dreamed of